Hi, everybody. Welcome to another Puremix live stream. This one's super special. We are joined by some incredible people today. We have Scott Jacoby, Michael Goldwasser, and the one and only Jason Mraz. How's everybody doing?
Good.
Fantastic.
Well,
It's good to be here.
awesome.
Great.
Yeah, great to have you guys here. Thank you for taking the time to do this and come and talk to all of us and all that. So, just to kind of tell everybody what we're gonna be doing here, we have a song pulled up. Scott's been gracious enough to pull up a Pro Tools session from Jason's latest record, and we're gonna kind of be going through some of that, as well as taking your questions in. So, right below the video, there's a section called "Ask a Question." You guys can submit your questions there. Upvote other people's questions that you like that you want to see answered, and we'll be getting to those as well. So yeah. So to start out and kind of do intros for everybody, let's talk a little bit about the roles that everybody played. So Jason, you are obviously the artist and principal songwriter on the record.
That's correct. Um, I that's always been my gig, singer-songwriter. I became a songwriter because I needed things to sing about, and very quickly in that process, I felt transformed by that experience, and then I also saw that audiences could be transformed by a great song. So it kind of became a thing for me to try to craft songs that were transformative, songs that open the mind or elevate one's life experience in a positive way.
Mm-hmm.
So I've been doing that for probably 2 decades now, with an emphasis on positivity. And then about 2 years, 2.5 years ago, I met Michael Goldwasser. I was already familiar with his productions, but we had a chance to work on a song together, and we met and decided, hey, we should combine our positive interests and see what we can make. So I'll pass that over to Michael right now.
Hey, thanks, Jason. Yeah, I'm the producer of Jason's new album and the current singles that are out right now. The album comes out June 19th. It's called Look for the Good. And I've been producing for, wow, a couple decades. And I started out like maybe a lot of the people who are listening to this, watching this, as a musician, making my own music, writing. I was playing in clubs around New York, even as a teenager, as a so-called artist. Um, but I always had an ear for the details in the fabric, as someone would say. So like I would listen to music even as a kid, and I'd be thinking, "Wow, that tambourine, what's that doing?" Eventually I realized, wait, maybe I'm a producer, or maybe I want to be a producer. Because I was always thinking of all these details and how all the little details all have to work, but then the big picture has to work as well. It's being able to see with a wide lens and a narrow lens. So yeah, I love producing, and I engineer my own stuff, but I certainly am not an engineer, and that's why when it came time to mix this album, I called in Scott, kicking it over to you.
Well, this is all flowing so well. Um, yeah, hey everyone, great to be here with all of you. Especially during these times, I think it's awesome to have this as a vehicle to discuss music and the music making process. And so happy to be here. So my tale's not too dissimilar from Michael's. I'm a writer, producer, mixer, and former recovering bad recording artist, like a few decades ago. And in this particular album, which I've been lucky enough to work on, I've been playing the role of mixer. Which I'll just say that one of I think that my favorite things about mixing is sort of like having an awareness of songwriting and production as well. Kind of gives a slightly different perspective on things. You're just not looking at it all from a certain perspective. You're kind of like understand the whole process, and it's cool that we have all three parts of this, including performer as well. So writing, production, mixing, and the artist himself here to kind of discuss the making of this song and album.
That's great. Awesome. So when did you guys start working on the record?
Michael and I started in February of 2019. I mean, we'd had lots of conversations prior to that, But in February, I think, is when we really first started sharing demos and emailing back and forth lyrics, arrangements. Michael started working on really building the arrangements at home by himself. Then would send them to me. I'd cut vocals on them, sometimes move some things around to extend the song or change the arrangement a little bit. We rarely would have a song that required a whole lot of overhaul, but one example is a great song on this album called DJ FMAM Jason, which is a track Michael, I believe, had been sitting on for a couple of years, maybe more than 10 years.
Yeah.
Nice.
And I'd had a concept to write this song called DJ FMAM Jason, which is an acronym of the calendar month starting from December. And never knew how I was going to pull it off. And then I heard this track of Michael's, and it fit, but I needed to flip the verse and the chorus and then add a chorus to the third verse just musically so that the melodies could evolve and sort of take us on a journey. So I would then just kind of cut and paste his stereo demo file that he would send me, and then I'd send him then back. And, you know, it was just a lot of Tetris and a lot of playing Legos with samples and sound bites and ideas. And that was about a 6-month process from February to July, August, of just he and I working exclusively via email. And then in August of 2019, we put a band together and all got in the room. And for about 2 weeks total, from the time the band first met, which was a night in Los Angeles, we all got together at a rehearsal space and we all played those songs. That night, it already felt electric. Like the arrangements worked, the songs worked. Like we could have gone and played a show. That's how good I felt. I was so emotional. A few days later, we all met down at my studio here in San Diego and spent a few days kind of putting all the pieces together to figure out how we're going to get 13 people to play and sing all at the same time. And we figured it out. I've never done something that huge in my home space, but we figured that out. So that was in August. And that was, like I said, it was about a 2-week period from the first rehearsal night to the night that we all decided to wrap on the process. So that's pretty fast. But then Michael can tell you, he took those files, those recorded files, back to New York and went through the producer's role of going through all the takes and, you know, putting them all together, cleaning things up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Awesome.
that's wow. It's so fun to hear you even tell this story and remember it, and like, wow, that was so great. It wasn't that long ago, you know.
It really wasn't.
One thing that I want to that Jason said that I want to jump off on, because it might be useful to the people watching and listening, is that the process of creating this album, as Jason said, we started out with just sending ideas back and forth via the internet, which is a great tool, obviously, when you can't be together, especially now in these days and times when you really can't physically be together. But it only works if both people or all the people involved are doing it with an open mind and an open heart, you know. And that, I think, you know, Jason and I were always honest with each other and open to each other's ideas. And I think that's one of the reasons why we succeeded. So even if you're just an engineer, you know, I mean, not just an engineer is a very important thing, but I'm saying if you're an engineer, you know, I'd like to think you're going to be a better engineer if you're willing to listen to other people's ideas and not always be set in your ways, you know. And you might be right, but maybe sometimes you need to even hear someone else's opposing view of how to approach something to then even really feel sure that you're right. So I think that's an important part of the whole process, whether you're an artist, songwriter, musician, engineer, producer, mastering engineer, anybody. It's really important when you're making music to have an open heart and an open mind.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's the hardest part, you know, keeping that heart open, especially, you know, when you start sending your files around and someone has a different idea, or if you're with a label and a committee or other people who might be funding your project and they start chiming in, or managers or whoever start chiming in about for any comment on it, you have to keep that heart open and know that everyone's perspective might be trying to offer you a good perspective. They might be trying to offer you a new path. And if your heart's closed, you may miss that path or that opportunity to go down that lane and see what's really down there. So that's a good comment, Michael. It's that you definitely have to keep your heart open in this
Thank
process.
But getting back to the production process that Jason punted over to me, yeah, like once, producing isn't just putting together the band, working out the arrangements, all the pre-production stuff, and then being in the studio, which was the best part of it really, was being in the studio together. And we did track live 6 musicians at a time, myself, 6 other musicians, and Jason singing, and backing vocalists all singing live, even though those vocals might have been scratch. So it was really like a vibe of people making music together, not laying down one thing and then laying down another, But then after all that was done, and we wrapped those 2 weeks in California, yes, I had a lot of sorting out to do, a lot of editing, a lot of rethinking. There were some songs where the pre-chorus became the intro to the song, because you spend enough time with something, and if you have the open heart and the open mind, I guess that could be the subtitle for this conversation. Then you can find new ways of expressing the song, which is really cool, So somehow everything did flow really quickly, though, from the conception and the writing of everything, which Jason said took us about 6 months, then recording, and then we did overdubs. We got some guest vocals on it, which was really great. So before you knew it, we had to mix, which is awesome. And I've known Scott for quite a few years. We met through NARIS, the Grammys, and we had done some work before. In fact, he had mixed a remix that I did for Jason in 2018 called "Have It All," and I knew that Scott would be a great person to mix, because not only is he a friend and a great person with an open heart and open mind, but he really understands reggae music, but also pop music. When you're trying to do something kind of new, which is a Jason Mraz straight up reggae album. I mean, I hope all of you are going to go out and listen to it when it comes out June 19th. But my goal as a producer was to make it sound like traditional roots reggae that could have been recorded in Jamaica, paying homage to Jamaican reggae and not trying to be some weird fake American version of reggae. Not that there's anything wrong with that. But so it's important to have someone mixing the music who understands the language, understands the genre. So it was great to, know, like Scott, he's won Grammys for not reggae stuff, but I knew that he really knows reggae. He really knows lots of styles of music. So he seemed like the perfect choice to mix this. And he was nice enough to allow me to always be in the studio with him, mixing and participating, so that I could really make sure that my vision for the album was able to come to fruition. So Scott, thank you.
Thank you. That's extremely generous. I feel, just as a fan here, I almost want to kind of go back to you guys talking about the tracking of this a little bit more, and sort of like sound decisions, because my role on the album came so much later. You guys, a mixer, a mastering engineer kind of comes in at the tail end and gets a bunch of credit, maybe too much in some cases. And you guys, so much was in such great shape in terms of the arrangements and the sounds by the time that I got it. I'll come back to talking about mix a little bit later, but I'm curious a little, about sort of sound choices and how, Jason, turning your place into a full-on studio accommodating this many musicians. It's pretty fascinating. I was always curious what those sessions looked like and what were the challenges and that sort of thing.
I'd like to tell you a little story, if I may. So I've had this little studio in my backyard since 2006. That's really right kind of when I built it and moved into it. And I didn't know much about studios, so it really was just a shell. And it kind of looked like a ballet studio at first, because I had no gear. I had a little bit of recording gear from my tour that I wheeled in on a rack. I had some 192s, and I bought a computer, and I had whatever mic I bought at Guitar Center. That was pretty much it. But through the years, project after project, I would pick up some equipment. And right behind me, I have this cute little Neve sidecar, little broadcasting Neve that I found at a rehearsal studio in Hoboken, New Jersey, back in probably 2006 or 7. So anyway, on my tours, I would gather stuff. And I was really just running at my capacity, a little API 1606 console, right? Little 16 channel API. Well, about 2 years ago, my friends Jeff Berkeley, who was the engineer on this in the recording room, and Robbie Robinson, who actually ended up mastering this record for us at Robinson Mastering. Shout out to Robbie. Those guys called me and said, "Hey, the studio scene isn't what it used to be. We want to close our tracking rooms, and we have all this gear, but we don't want to sell it. Can we give it to you?" And I said, "No, I can't. I don't want a huge console. I don't want all your racks. I don't. And they're like, "Well, you can use it whenever you want." I said no for a couple of months, and then finally they talked me into it, and so did other members on my team. They talked me into it. Like, let's see what happens. Let's bring it in. So we had to put it in the big room, in the tracking room, this big Neve console. It's a Neve Custom 75, and it's gorgeous. And the caveat was Jeff and Robbie want to come by and use the board still. So basically, they finagled turning my studio into their studio. And it was a blessing. It really was, because for a decade, I've just been workshopping songs here. I'd only done maybe a half dozen tracks start to finish that actually became releases. Everything else I'd done here was just for demo purposes. And then I would move into a producer studio and we'd actually make a record. So having Jeff and Robbie in here, basically dialing my room in and bringing all this gear, I was able to turn my workshopping songs, kind of take them to the next level. And then I moved all my gear over into just one side of the building. So now I have my own little recording suite, which is where I'm at here, still doing my workshopping. But we have a live room next door that is Jeff and Robbie's room that's got the full console and much more stuff. Long story short, Michael and I start talking about where we want to make this record. Michael's out visiting Southern California. I'm like, come by my studio. Let's see if we can do it at my place. Let's see if we have the capacity to do it. And so by talking with Jeff and Robbie and Michael and seeing what capacity we have, I only have one ISO booth, but we were able to bring in from my touring gear some ISO cabinets for the amps. We put Raining Jay and our background vocalist. We put them outside on the other side of the building. We just ran some headphone splitters and a mic out there. We didn't bring the horns in until late because we just knew they'd blast us out entirely. But just about everyone else was in the big room, which a massive group of people, 7, 8 people probably in the big room. Including the engineer and the console, everyone, the band, everything, and the console in one space. And then our piano player would just play a Nord to get the basics down quietly, and then we'd immediately overdub the piano on top of that take. We had a Leslie in this office as well, right next to the piano. So that we did track live. We did track the Leslie live so that it could be part of the whole thing. But none of this would have happened if my friends hadn't said, "Hey, we have this giant console. We need to put it somewhere." And because I just I wouldn't have had the recording capacity to do it here. And it's interesting that synchronicity of these longtime friendships and these guys trusting me with their gear and then welcoming them into the studio, and how it really it's become a community studio. And I love it because I live out in the fringe of San Diego. But now, thanks to Jeff and Robbie recording here, a lot of the San Diego music scene comes to this studio to do their work. And now I get to interact with the San Diego music scene daily, weekly, as they come to the studio to record their songs. So I feel really blessed to have these engineers and these sound recording caregivers in my backyard. And then being able to record this album at home, this was really the first album I've ever done at home, recording almost every sound here from start to finish, minus a few guest vocals and maybe a horn overdub or something. Michael can tell you if there's anything else that was done outside of here. Michael had some guitar parts he probably did at home and a synth bass he probably did at home, but most of the stuff was done here. And I'll probably ask these guys to never leave because now we have this great console, a great team, and it serves it serves the music community in a big way. Just beyond my own recordings. A lot of people get to record here.
That's great.
Yeah, if I can add, I mean, Jason, you did a great job of describing the situation. But for me, coming in from the outside, I've worked in a lot of quote unquote, like, really nice studios. And while Jason's studio maybe didn't have all of the outboard gear that I would have requested for a session, the great vibes of the studio and the warmth and really just the vibes kind of were totally made up for any lacking, oh, I wish I had that compressor or whatever, I guess the point is that sometimes the equipment isn't the most important thing. I guess it's actually never the most important thing. The people are the most important thing, but I would record in Jason's studio all the time if I could, just because of the vibes, and to be able to step outside and be on Jason's farm, and be around nature, and all just the great people who were just stopping by, friends of Jason's who are now friends of mine. And even though it was hard work, but the best kind of hard work, I might, as a producer, I kind of had to be on point for 12, 14 hours a day or more even, but I enjoyed every second of it because of the people and the vibes and the music. We really, like Jason pointed out a while ago, everything really clicked musically with the band. So, and we did feel like after one rehearsal, we'd be like, yo, let's play a show. It would be the best show in town that night. Another important thing about producing this record to me was, look, Jason lives on an organic farm, and I wanted the music to be organic, and that's kind of my MO anyway. I'm known for doing reggae with real instruments and real human beings playing it. And I really thought that was important to the sound, like, why use just a Nord? Like, some keyboardists might be like, well, it's just as good as a real piano, but it's just not to me. So it was great to be able to just immediately overdub the piano after the scratch was down, and we used a real Hammond organ with Leslie, and the guitars were playing through amps. There's no amp simulation, and for the bass, I requested and got, thank you, E.T., an Ampeg SVT amp with a big cabinet. And, it's just, I think the warmth of the music, of the warmth of the people and the instruments and the equipment is then translated into the warmth of the music. And it may be an anomaly in today's music that even though it's recorded to Pro Tools, as you'll see, and digitally, but we tried to make it a sound as analog as possible. And I think that's the music that hopefully will stand the test of time, that it's never going to be harsh on people's ears. They're going to enjoy listening to it 20 years from now, 30 years from now, all that.
We should listen to some music. This is because we're talking about how great we are.
Yeah.
But
No,
I
it's
did
a
tell
really
you
unique process. Yeah.
the result of all of these interested parties and including the band, the very, very talented band who showed up with all clean gear, who knew exactly what to do with it. I don't think we spent ever too much time finding a buzz in anything or having to fix a ground issue. Like, things worked pretty well. And when they didn't, another shout out to E.T. E.T.'s my production manager on the road, who's also been helping us out here on the studio. And he would just grab something quickly and get it fixed if we needed it. But yeah, this was about people coming together, and the good vibes really shows in the music. It is warm and buttery, and it just sounds so real and delicious and human.
Amazing. Awesome.
Look for the good in everything. Look for the people who will set your soul free. It always seems impossible until it's done. Look for the good in everyone. the people who will set your soul free. It always seems impossible until it's done. Look for the good in everyone. People done gone crazy. People done gone mad. People done forgot the superpowers we all have.
Oh,
We were born to love, not hate.
should we break this down a little bit?
Our fate and look for the good in everyone and celebrate all our mistakes. If there's a silver lining, you still have to find it, find it, find it. Look for the good in everything.
Well, just wanted to give folks a taste to hear what we're talking about, because like
Right.
that great Frank Zappa, I don't know who ever gets the quote, but you know, talking about music's like dancing about architecture or something about that. So we gotta listen to it at some point.
Cool.
Yeah, that's great. It sounds amazing, guys.
It does. And that version too, that's going to be the album version that has a nice long instrumental kind of kicking it off before the song really gets going. And there's a single version that's out now, but it just jumps straight into the lyrics. And the thing I love about that album version is that I sing the intro, but then we give the band that full round to just establish the groove and kind of get your ears familiar with the tones, the textures that you're going to be hearing throughout the whole album. It's such a nice intro, and that's how the whole album starts, with this track. It was, I believe, the origin of the song came from Michael's rabbi, who said, "Look for the good in everything," or "Look for the good in everyone," essentially. So he goes home and he writes this instrumental track and he titles it "Look for the Good," and sends it to me, and then I just. Thank goodness it had the title on it, because sometimes I don't know what to do with an instrumental. I need a seed, I need a prompt, I need parameters. And Look for the Good just felt so in my wheelhouse. Like that's what every song I write is trying to accomplish, is I'm trying to accomplish, okay, what in the world can I look for the good in? Like that's where's this song going? And so right off the bat, I had that kind of seed planted, and it didn't take too long to put together. I think I put together a quick version first, but then workshopped it with Raining Jane, the vocalists who are on this track. They're a band that I work with and travel with. We probably spent another couple of weeks tweaking it and just turning it into a song that no matter what instrument you're on, it can still be delivered as a song. But let's talk more about the specifics of the track here.
Amazing.
You know what? I'm having a little audio issue on my end, so I didn't catch 100% of what you said, Jason. But I'm gonna bullshit my way through it. Yeah. So the track itself, you know, Jason, being that he's got an open heart and an open mind, he's like, "Hey, do you want to submit some music for the album?" So I honestly came up with this one thinking, what would be a great reggae track, Jason Mraz reggae track? Like I tried to come up with a chord progression that I thought I could hear Jason on that, you know? And as Jason said, as probably something that words that he never thought would come out of his mouth. Well, the rabbi said, no. Yeah, I did hear a rabbi give a sermon where he said, "Look for the good and you'll find the good." And I just thought that's so true. Now, and that was a few years ago, and it really stuck with me, you know, where I thought, if I just look for the good in everything, I'm going to find the good. It's inevitable, you know, because I think that's within every human. And I thought that Jason would dig that too. And in fact, I think maybe earlier in our relationship, Jason and I had even discussed that concept, you know, so that's why I titled the track that. And obviously I'm very glad I did, because I feel like we got a really, really great and meaningful song out of it.
And an album title.
And an album title. And it's the first words sung on the album and the last words sung on the album. But
correct.
You all are going to have to find that out when you hear the album.
That's right.
Also, because I'm digressing, but we also wanted to make an album that isn't just a collection of songs, an album that has a flow to it that really makes sense. It takes the listener on a journey. And so we thought it'd be really great to start and end, bookend the album with the same lyric, which is the theme of the album. But track-wise, you know, I've been writing and arranging and producing reggae for a few decades now, and a lot of it, I don't think too hard about it. I just sit down, like to write. A lot of reggae is centered on the bass line. And I don't remember if I actually wrote this on a bass or on a guitar, but it just kind of flowed out of me. I wasn't thinking, what note should I play there? I think I let my fingers and my heart and my instinct do the work, you know, and I just came up with that bass line immediately. And then to craft an arrangement for Jason to write over, you know, I wanted to come out, you know, I found, I have lots of drums that I've recorded over the years. So I just found some good drums that I could then put into the, you know, to customize for this. Laid down some bass, guitar, some piano and some organ just to give it a vibe. And I kind of forgot this, but in my original demo of this, I put a little dance hall section in the middle of it too, which I forgot about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which I didn't use. I said, I'm sorry.
Yeah, which is great. That's the thing. You gotta,
Yeah.
I was not offended because I have an open heart and an open
Great,
mind.
yeah.
But anyway, so, you know, you have to know the genre you're working with and what the parameters are. You don't have to stick to the parameters. You don't have to, there are no rules in music, but it's good to know the foundation, you know, and that's how I always try to work on any style of music. Like to, you know, like if I decided to produce, you know, a country song and I don't have a lot of experience with that, I would really try to know what I'm doing before I just jump into it. I mean, that's just me. Maybe everyone else is very different about that. But I feel like if you respect the genre on a certain level, then it's going to respect you back.
Awesome. Yeah. We have a question that I think would be pretty cool to hit while we're on that note. So this one starts off with, Michael, it's your boy Cliff. And
I don't know anyone named Cliff. No.
Cliff is asking,
it's my boy Cliff. Yeah.
He's asking what was one of the biggest challenges for you when producing the record.
Wow. Thanks for throwing me a hardball, Cliff. Well, I mean, the biggest challenge I think for any album is to, as I said much earlier, like looking at the big picture and then being on top of every single little detail. So in order to do that, it's kind of dorky, but I keep a very elaborate set of spreadsheets so that I make sure I'm taking care of all the details that I set out to take care of. But I also really have to look at the big picture. And the things that could have been a big challenge with this, like working with an artist of Jason's stature, and maybe some expectations, having, you know, working with a major label artist, I didn't really feel that kind of pressure because Jason's just such a great guy and the vibes were just right, you know? So I wasn't thinking, oh my God, we got to make the next huge Jason Mraz album. I just felt like we're making a great album. Whatever happens with it, you know, I hope it's successful, but I know that we did the right work, you know? But I'd say the biggest challenge was probably just, you know, keeping track of everything and dealing, especially because we tried to and succeeded in recording, you know, 7 or 8 people or live in the studio. That could have been a huge challenge, but it wasn't that hard because I think everyone was just playing really well, vibing really well. You know, sure, on some songs we took, you know, quite a few takes, whatever, but that's the nature of it. But luckily, because I work with such a great group of people and such a talented artist like Jason, and, you know, great engineer and great support staff, everyone around us who was helping us succeed, that didn't wind up being a big challenge. So thanks, Cliff.
Awesome. Cliff also asked, what was one of the biggest challenges when mixing the record for Scott?
Thanks, Cliff. So, before I answer that, and I'll just say a little bit about the sort of mix approach, because I think, you know, when you hear Jason and hear Michael speak about this, there's a lot of intention that went into this album in terms of the the writing, the vibe, you know, the feel that you want to get. And I think the most important thing that I think about as a mixer is, number one, you need to serve the music. So you know, you're getting something that people have worked on before you, and you need to do the right thing for that. Sometimes it's very clear what that is, and sometimes it isn't. In this case, you know, it was clear from what Michael was describing before, of like, this is human beings playing real music on real instruments, almost without exception, or basically entirely without exception. And so, you know, I wanted to sort of stick to that realm of being organic and real sounding and very human. And you know, I try to think of these things very top down. Think of in mixing sort of the largest stuff first. Essentially, you know, mixing, you're sort of using technical means to achieve emotional results. And so, you know, the technical stuff is one level, but like, think of it backwards. You want people to feel a certain way listening to this. And so reverse engineer that. How do you get someone to sort of shake their head, nod their head? How do you get them to kind of like experience bass in the right way on a reggae record? You know, these are the things that are the broadest and most important things to think about first. And then to answer your question, Cliff, I think the challenge was something that we faced at Jason, Michael, and myself at the very beginning. Before Jason was even in the studio, we had sent some mixes back and forth, I believe, on not on this song, but another one. And it was really zeroing in on that spectrum of sort of organic to pop and where we were going to exist for this album. And I think initially I had, in kind of not knowing Jason as a person yet, but knowing Jason as you know, an established recording artist and being familiar with his other material, I leaned this further, despite the fact that I went organic, and most things that I do sort of like lean organic, that I went a little bit more pop and a little bit more crispy, a little bit more precise. And I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jason and Michael, but some of the original comments on the mixes were like, hey, this sounds pretty good, but it's like too sparkly, it's too clean, it's too pop. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yeah, I was, and there were even maybe some treatments on the vocal, or treatments on things that I was so used to hearing what was coming off the floor in the recording room that I had probably cursed your mixing project, because there was nothing on our end that was just sort of these true tones, I guess. And then the first idea that came from you and Michael, it sounded like, okay, let's see if we can shape this into something. And I thought, I don't know that it needs a whole lot of treatment. Like, let's see if we can preserve as many of those authentic natural tones as possible. It was probably more specifically on the vocal. And if I listen back to some of my pop records, it's, you know, there are treatments, there are, you know, heavy compression at the very end of the whole chain. And this has more of a laid back feel. So that was sort of my instinct was, let's not do too much to this thing. Let's just make sure you can hear all the goodness.
Yeah, that's is well taken then, and certainly is now. I think that was really the key moment, just in terms of sort of the mixing thing, is finding a sound, finding a template, finding a vibe that worked for the entire album. And we were basically able to apply that to almost every song. I'm not talking about sort of like cutting and paste and session templates. I'm just talking about a feeling, you know, and I think Jason brought up two key points there. One is the compression. I think initially I was going a little bit too heavy on the compression, which a lot of, you know, it's basically the sound of radio, you know, for the past however many decades. It's the sound of pop records, but it's not the sound of, I think, what we were hoping to do with this album. So I just dialed all that stuff back a little bit, and we found a really happy area. And the other was just to kind of like keep stuff really organic, you know, and just given the fact that the raw recordings sounded as good as they did, that was a lesson I learned, you know, like 15 years ago when I mixed my first jazz record that was recorded at Avatar, and really well. I had nothing to do with the recording, and I kind of get the recording in, and I'm like, I'm mixing. I know what to do. I'm twisting lots of knobs, and I'm treating everything, and it just sounded god awful. And then I kind of like went back and I just said, you know, what have I done to this thing? And I took off every plugin and everything, and I just sort of listened to the raw thing, and I said, you know what, this is about 90% there. And that's a great lesson in life and great lesson in mixing is, you know, I went to medical school for a couple of years, and the oath the doctor says, you know, first do no harm. So, you know, if you're listening to raw tracks of an album, first of all, listen to them and don't just start twisting stuff. Mm-hmm. Second of all, you know, listen to what's great about it. And if it's not great, then make it great. But if it is great, there's no need to mess with it that much. It's really become sculpting and sort of like doing the higher level mixing stuff, which is really about making people feel a certain way when they listen.
Mm-hmm. I like that comment. If it's great, let it be. If it's not, it's same as in songwriting. Like if when you listen back to maybe something you've written, if something makes you cringe and makes you question, is that good? Then maybe it's not good, you know, but if you can zoom through it, then something must be connecting. And the same thing goes, like if I stop listening, like if I'm listening to a track and then suddenly I start to drift off and think about something else, then clearly something happened in the song that ejected me out of the moment and sent me off into somewhere else. So then I go back and I listen to figure out where that moment is and go, oh, sure enough, it's this lyric that doesn't make sense. Or sure enough, it's this moment that's so repetitive, I've gotten bored and now I'm ready to go on and do another task. So having some kind of editor in you that knows, yeah, this is great, I can keep this, or no, this is not great, I got to figure out a way to fix this. And I've gotten to many mixing rooms with stuff that's not great and had to ask the mixer to like, can you please fix this arrangement or change this or that. So I've tried to get better at that after all these records. So hopefully we were able to hand Scott something that was almost done, even though I know I was still changing things and fixing things, even though you guys were mixing. I was like, wait, I got to fix that. I didn't know I forgot to fix that or do that or something. So there were still some late last minute fly-ins.
Well, art is never finished. It's only abandoned.
Correct.
Yep.
And that's a good thing to know, because I've got a lot of friends that never finish stuff and they hang on to it because it's not finished. But I'm saying part of the art is really letting it go and seeing how it feels to say, this is what I made during this period of time. And it's okay that it doesn't sound this way. I mean, I listen to a lot of my old material and think, wow, those lyrics weren't finished, but the album was due, so it's out. And I know on the road and every time I perform it, I can continually update the lyrics. It's fine with me. But you do got to be somewhat detached. As much as you are attached to creating and loving your material, you also have to be somewhat detached to let your artwork kind of go exist in the world.
Jason, that's a really, really wonderful thing that you just touched on that I think a lot of people struggle with. And we talk about it on these Q&A and streams a lot, about knowing when the mix is done. And as a songwriter, how long did it take you to come to that notion of part of this process is letting it go?
I don't remember when, but I guess I've always considered myself a live performer more than just a writer or a recording artist. And the thing about the live performance is you have to let it go. Like, this is it. I'm doing this on stage right now. And if it sucks, it sucks. But that's going to be what the art is today. And usually in the live setting, we're not recording it. And you can just feel okay that only the room full of people saw that awkward moment and you move on. And then it's also about the beauty of how you recover from those awkward moments. So I really love the live performance for that. And then, so being able to carry some of that attitude over into recording as well is something I'm grateful that I can do. I mean, there's plenty of recordings where I'm like, oh gosh, I hope no one ever hears this, because a recording seems so final. It seems so absolute, and it's going to be scrutinized and analyzed and or hopefully celebrated. But if you feel like it's wrong, that's where that certain detachment has to come in, and just know that, you know what, that recording might be final. It might be, that's how that is. But as an artist, I'm not final. I'm still going. And my next recording, I'll have learned from that little mistake I made, the mistake of either not finishing the writing, or that the mistake I made of forgetting to activate a certain button when I was bouncing the thing. And who knows? All of those little mistakes are going to make you the better artist in the new now moment when you're creating your next thing. So that's I'm always looking for the good. So even when I fail, I think, okay, well, what's good about this failure? And luckily, failures plus time equals comedy. So all of my really embarrassing moments that are recorded on tape or audio tape, we laugh at them because enough time has passed to know that, wow, I really was a complete idiot that day or in that recording. So it's okay, you know.
Yeah.
One piece of art is never going to define you. So if you get it wrong, no big deal. Move on to the next one.
Yeah. That's great. That's a healthy outlook. Michael and Scott, how about
can I
you
add
guys?
something?
Yeah.
Just based off of what Jason was just saying about being a live performance, and then it's happening then, and you can't take it back. It is what it is. I have a challenge to all you engineers out there who are mix engineers out there, which is approach your next mix like it's a live performance. I mixed a dub album of this entire album that I did with Jason that's eventually going to come out. And I did it all on analog board, all outboard gear, and every mix was a performance. And, you know, I did a few mixes of each song, but it was, you know, it's liberating to do that. So like, I know maybe a lot of you are working just strictly in the digital realm. Maybe all of you are, I don't know. But even so, like, challenge yourself to take a mix and yeah, you listen to it a couple times, but then say, all right, I'm mixing it right now. And any changes you make are happening at that moment. And it's a lie. It's basically a performance, you know, and then do it a few times in a row and then put it away and say, okay, that was my live mix. And maybe it's perfect. I mean, perfect as it needs to be, you know, or maybe I'm crazy.
Those dubs are sick too, by the way. There's like 5 to 7 different performances of each track. And they are all very different. You can hear obviously from take 1 to take 7, there's an evolution of you. Like maybe in take 4, he's like, "Ooh, I want to start doing this at this part," and then he's got to do the take again and record the bounce and the mix all live with real-timed delays and mutes, and it's so cool. And so we're also working on how to get those dubs out to the world so people can enjoy this album as well from the dub plate perspective. Right now I've been sneaking little highlights of those dubs out during my Wednesday live stream just as background music. But they're super cool. It's a completely different tone to the mix that Scott was working on.
And I want to take this opportunity to invite everyone to check out Jason's live stream. Shameless plug. It's just because it's really fun, and I'm sure everyone's enjoying listening to Jason talk now. But this is like a whole other level of performance, improvising, guests. You know, Jason's just talking about his philosophy of life, and I think it's really great. It's go to Jason Mraz YouTube, Jason Mraz.
That's it. I think that's it.
Jason Mraz
on YouTube
/ Jason Mraz, and and it's called the La 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 live stream. I am not. I have nothing to do with it. I mean, I've been a guest on it, but my point, I'm only promoting it because it's just a really cool expression of Jason that I think everyone would enjoy. So.
Thanks. I'm trying to keep it in the time that we're in now, although I'm starting to play some older songs on the live stream. But I'm also showing some video clips that include interviews of the band that helped us make this record, and I think those players are really important to this process, to this album. Michael gives us reggae recommendations on that live stream. There's farm videos. I'm trying to make some silly videos of what my life looks like when I'm actually doing my other gig, which is fruit farming, exotic fruit cultivation. So yeah, that's Wednesday mornings. Currently at Wednesday mornings, 10 a.m. Pacific time on the YouTube, but I'm probably going to change it because I don't know why it's at 10 a.m. I feel I'd rather it be at 10 p.m. That's more my time, but whatever.
Awesome.
I tried to accommodate all the many other time zones that are to the east of me by choosing a morning time slot, but it's whatever.
It's killing me.
It's killing me. There isn't enough coffee in my mug for a 10 a.m. show.
Well,
You got a
guys,
whole farm full of coffee.
Exactly.
yes. I want to be super respectful of everybody's time and everything here. So we got about 15 minutes left here, and there's some pretty good questions coming through. Are you guys cool if we try to rapid fire through some?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we should definitely acknowledge the listeners, the people chiming in on the chat, and maybe even play some more music or isolate some stuff if that's possible, because I think that's a really cool aspect of this.
Yeah, and actually to kick that off, we have a question about the vocal sound, and this is from Ethan, and he asks, when choosing a reverb for Jason's voice, was there a Jason vocal sound, and where did reggae as a style play into that for you, Scott?
Oh, cool. Great question. Thank you for that. Let's take a look. It's again a cool opportunity to have the session here. So scroll down to the lead vocal, which is this pink one here, and first of all, in terms of the reverb sound and the Jason sound for the whole album, there was a sense of that. Like let's establish, this being an organic album and one that has, a theme. Let's do some stuff that unifies songs. It's not to say that every song has the same vocal sound or the same reverb, but you'll see if we were to open up many songs that you'd see a lot of the same things appearing in terms of reverbs and stuff like that. And I think in general, we tried to stick to a really organic palette of things. And so you'll see here too in the session, if you guys are looking at this on your screens, if you just go through, is kick in, kick out, what you're not seeing there is any kind of trigger, for example. I know a lot of people, including myself, you get tracks in and say, yeah, the kick's not quite cutting it, let's add something. And then before you know it, you're not using any of the original kick. It's all sort of like replaced sounds. You won't find one replaced sound on the whole album. This is what it is. I think we can credit that toward a great engineered product from the get-go and great production decisions made on the spot, but also sort of staying true to the intention of the album. You listen to a lot of the greatest reggae albums and performances of all time. Sonically, they are their own thing, and they're not necessarily the most crisp, or they're not necessarily the most this or that, but they're sort of true to themselves. And I think that we wanted to be true to this album too. And everything sounded great from the get-go, so let's keep it. So there's no triggers, there's no funny stuff at all. So back to the vocal down here. For the most part, as reverb, we used plate, and I can tell you what that is. I want to kind of get too into the plugs and stuff like that, but it's this one. So Waves, I think that's the Abbey Road plate. And we use that, and I tweak the settings a little bit. Let's take a listen to the vocal, if that's okay, and listen to that solo for a second. We can hear a little bit of the processing.
Look for the good in everything. Look for the people who will set your soul free. It always seems...
So you can see that in terms of the sends here, there's only a send to the reverb, and it's not a lot of reverb. It's a pretty clean sound. It's just that plate. What you'll also see here is in one section of the tune, we've got some automated delay sends. Like that one comes on here. Let's hear what's going on.
It always seems impossible.
All right, so that's emulating a tape delay thing, and again, true to the genre. That's something we incorporated in a lot of songs. And then just in terms of the vocal sound, aside from the time-based stuff of reverbs and delays and things like that, it's really pretty organic. I use it in my process. I'm using sort of a combination of hardware and software. And for this album in particular, every major aspect of the mix and the arrangements, from vocals, background vocals, kick, snare, whole drum kit, bass, guitar groups, things like that, those are all leaving the box and going into actual boxes and then coming back in. And I think that works for some people, doesn't work for others, and it just was the right thing for this album, and sort of kind of gave it a sound. So after that first round of comments that Jason and I were talking about before, kind of went really pretty light on the vocal compression. We didn't want this to sound like, we just wanted it to sound natural. And so the settings for, the compressors and things like that are, just fairly modest, doing a little bit more defensive compression in a sense than sort of aggressive or sort of sculpting, sort of changing the sound. And EQ, the same thing. We didn't want stuff that's overly bright or crispy, just kind of like warm. I think that was one of the goals of the album, that and I think Michael mentioned this before, like for me personally, my favorite sounding albums, whether they're modern or sort of going back a number of years, are ones where if you're listening to it, there's almost no point of pain as you turn up the volume knob. You can kind of go. And in my sort of humble opinion, a lot of modern records and particularly in pop and sort of the more pop oriented things, you get to a point and it hurts your ears. And this album, objectively speaking, like I can just turn this up on any stereo and it never hurts. And that was a personal goal too. Let's just like have you be able to kind of crank this thing and not have any pain.
Yeah, leave some room. We left a lot of room on it for the listener to have their own experience, to mix their own environment with this record. So I love that. Love that about this record.
That's great. Awesome. Well, on that point, we have our most upvoted question by the audience, and that is, what is the vocal chain that you use for Jason? So microphone, preamp, any EQ and compression, etc. Yeah.
On our end, it was a Chandler Red microphone with an LA2A clone that was going through for, what is that, limiting compression at the same time, LA2A? Is that what that is? Limiter?
Doing some, depending where it's at, right? Like,
exactly. It does both, or one or the other, yeah.
But that was it, and that goes straight into Pro Tools. So that's all we gave you was that raw signal from the Chandler Red to the LA2A. Wow.
And that microphone has a preamp built into it as well.
Yeah, so that thing is pretty impressive because it has, pre-built in it. The thing glows red from inside. It has settings on the mic where you can add some drive, you can add some boost, some gain on the mic itself, and you can be right up on it, but you can also keep a really nice distance from it too, and still get this very authentic sound. Yeah. Awesome. Prior to that, every other album I used a 251, but this was the first album I switched over and used the Chandler Red.
Sounds amazing. I also heard a little bit of guitar bleed when we were listening to the vocal and solo there. So was that all off the floor? Or?
That was probably my headphone bleed coming into the microphone experience. because I don't remember which final vocal take was used, whether the whole band was in the other room or I was playing to a playback, singing to a playback. Most likely I was singing to a playback, because after the band left, I would still work on vocals for quite a while. So yeah, you're hearing headphone bleed for sure.
There's
cool.
bleed all over the album, and that's kind of cool. You know, like not too much bleed, but it gives it a warmth and reality. You know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's great. Let's see. So Cliff asked another really good question, which was how much of the song was there already based on mixing during the production process? So before sending it to the mix engineer, and then he asked Scott, how did you decide what to leave alone and what to intervene on? It's going back to kind of what you were saying about the jazz record. And
Mm-hmm. I could jump in real quick. I mean, I think the arrangements in the songs are the same as when we gave them to Scott, but there might have been some additional muting, which affects the arrangement, which affects the sound. There's some little bit of dubbing going on, meaning muting and enhancing the song in the mixing process. But we never. I don't believe we ever had to extend the song or move a chorus over or write anything in the mixing room.
Yeah. We didn't write anything in the mixing room. We did do some moving some things around, and maybe you didn't notice it because we did it so well. Yeah.
Okay. I remember we turned Make Love into we gave it a very long outro, so that required some copy and paste.
Yeah,
because we just didn't want that song to stop.
Yeah, but like 98% of what we brought to Scott is what you're hearing. Yeah, so in terms of arrangements. Yeah.
Very cool. Oh, go ahead, Scott.
Oh no, I think just to answer that question about the mix stuff. Like I said before, I think stuff came in sounding pretty good, and it's just a matter of sort of listening to it and saying, okay, what can be improved without getting rid of the vibe of this thing, and also on a subtractive sense, like what can be taken away to improve this as well. So where there are buildups of frequencies that are sort of, not letting things to do what let them do what they need to do. So for example, it can take any element in the mix, and like bass here. So we have a DI signal, and then it was a pretty sort of subby signal coming in, just using this as an example, and that's great. And so we have that, and I was like, I just want to get a little bit more of the note. So I multed the DI, and then, do what a lot of people do, which is to kind of put some harmonic distortion on it, so to kind of like excite certain frequencies, and allow, in a subtle way, you to hear the sort of more of note in the bass. So that's this, right? And then mix this with the other guy. And then to round that off, the amp sound, which really a lot of the sub character is coming from the amp there. And so the three of those things are contributing to form what is the bass sound on this record, which sounds like this. And then just for all of the technical people, out there who are interested in this stuff, I tend to do a lot of, do things in parallel, and a lot of parallel compression, a lot of parallel stuff. And so all three of these bass signals are going to two different auxes over here. And one of them's going through a whole bunch of outboard gear that I have the bass running through. And then also a Sans amp to kind of, again, to pick up on, get a little bit of the higher content in there and sort of grid it up a little bit. So that's an example of what the types of things that I did on that album.
Yeah, very cool. And you actually just touched on something that somebody asked a question about, and that is Zach asks, if you could explain your mix template and what percentage you do in the box versus using outboard gear.
Sure. Thanks, Zach. I say percentage-wise, like I mentioned before, all of the major things in most of my mixes, but in particular on this record, are going out of the box, and it's just how I like to work, and in part I sort of grew up with plugins in a sense, believe it or not, and sort of have run into the building that's falling down, and in my choice of sort of adopting hardware, but I've really liked the results, and I like the workflow, and I like touching things. So that's how I've done that. And in terms of mix template, without getting too deep in it, I tend to do a lot of gain staging. I think most of you, if you're on Puremix, you know what that is, but I sort of pour little buckets of water into other areas, and those collect over there. And so there's a lot of different stages that each of the things go through. And at the end, like just for example, with the parallel stuff, all of my drums end up in 3 spaces. We'll solo that for 1 second. Here's the drum mix. Let's listen from it. I don't want to talk at the same time that it's playing, but basically the drums are coming up in 3 places, sort of main drum mix, which is limited, a crushed one, okay, which is really sort of like widening and taking out a lot of the heavy transients coming from the kick and snare. And then I have one that I'm always experimenting with for different sounds that I weave in or don't. In certain ones, this was a very prominent part of the mix in other songs on Jason's album, but this is sort of like the dirty one. And that one has a little bit more knock to it. So all 3 of these drums sort of have different aspects of what makes me feel excited about a drum track. All 3 of those things then go to an aux, which is called drums, where I have EQs and multiband compressors on each of those aux groups. And then those things then go to 3 different spots, just as is, and then a crushed thing and a limited thing. And then those things go to a master. It's kind of convoluted, but it works for me. And it goes to a master thing and then leaves the box and comes back in and goes to a master channel. So thanks for that question. Offline, I can go on about this for hours.
Yeah, amazing. That everything sounds so good in this session. It's mind blowing, and I'm listening through these things. It's really great. I can't wait to get into this record and dissect it. It's really, really awesome. This is exciting. So on that note, I just want to thank you guys so much for taking the time to come on and talk to us, and just be so transparent about your process and working together. And Jason, it's amazing that you're able to come on and talk about the artist perspective of working with Scott and with Michael. And this has been really, really fun. I feel like we've been on here for 10 minutes. It's already been an hour and some change. So, yeah.
Yeah, well, I'd do it all over again, and I think we're going to try to as well. We're looking at new songs and new arrangements right now to try to keep this positive vibe going, because it was a great experience, and it was, I don't want to say it was easy, but it what do you think, Michael? I don't want to use the words it was easy, because a lot of work went into this thing. It was many months, if not probably a full year from the time we started working on demos to the time that we buttoned up and delivered the mix. It was probably a full year, so it takes a lot of energy to do that. But I would do it all over again in a second, because it was good fun, and it sounds great.
We're gonna do it all over again. Don't worry about it, man.
Yeah.
This whole situation's gonna be over soon, and we're gonna make it happen.
Yeah.
But look, you said you didn't want to use the word easy, but it kind of is easy when you're doing something you love. you know. And I know it sounds so cliche, but like in order to make music, you've got to believe in it, you've got to be feeling it, and you've got to want to do it. You know, you can't. I mean, yes, I guess you could make music and you don't really care about it, but I just don't think that would be a hollow existence, you know. So yes, it's a lot of work, but it's easy because it's joyful. You know, it was. I think Jason, you used the word magical to describe the whole process. You know, so it was joyful and magical. So who cares if it's a lot of work? You know?
Yeah. I mean, it's like, I don't know if it's like alchemy in a way, because it goes, you take thought and then you turn that into sort of words, which is either lyrics or it's chords, it's spreadsheets for Michael. It's just scheduling. And then it's your action of showing up at your computer or your instrument or with your phone or whatever it is you're using to sort of capture the initial idea. And then it's continuing that process over and over again of thought, action, thought, word, action to basically turn this just dream into a tangible reality. I mean, here we are now, a year and a half after we started the project. Is that it? Just a year and a half? Less than a year and a half.
I think.
Yeah. Talking about it and dissecting it, and seeing it as a living, breathing thing that's separate from us. You know, it's out there in the world. So I don't know if alchemy is the right word, but it is magic in that we've conjured this thing out of thin air and put all these ingredients together. And that's the beauty of recording, is you assemble all of these ingredients, tighten them up, and then that little recording allows them to exist forever as their own living, breathing thing that other people then get to have as their own. So it is magical. It's very, very magical. I absolutely love it. I want to give a shout out to Jeff Berkeley, who worked 10 to 15 hours a day while we were recording in here, just sitting and capturing every take and dealing with 15 people, not barking at him, but just making lots of noise and making the room feel really small. So thanks, Jeff Berkeley, for your incredible sound capture. On my side, you know, we had Brian Spawn of Spawn Drums help us get the drum sounds, which were to Michael's specifications for reggae drums. So thanks, Brian Spawn, and thanks, Ettore ET on my production team. I want to thank Justin Hergit, who is out there, who helps me keep my studio updated and all my systems running. Justin, thank you. Robbie Robinson of Robinson Mastering, who graciously loaned us the custom 75 Neve console from Burbank Audio Systems. Thanks, Stephen Bruce at Burbank Audio. But Robbie, graciously mastered this record for us as well, honoring what Michael had done, honoring what Scott had done, and doing what a masterer does to just try to sort of preserve all those things as well to get it out to Spotify and release. So a huge team of passionate sound specialists, people who really care about this process. And of course the band, and if you, like we said this earlier, on my live stream and on my channels, I'm slowly putting out interviews into behind the scenes of this record so you can get to know the band more. There's even live performance. That's one of the things that I'm so glad we did. The very last night of recording, we dragged all the gear outside the studio and we played pretty much the whole album from start to finish live and filmed it. And it's almost identical to the record in that it's the same musicians, same gear, same inputs on the console, same time period. And we just gave live expressions of the songs. And so if you check that out, they're on my socials and on my YouTube, etc. We're slowly starting to put those performances out. But you can actually see the band and kind of who we were back in August. And it's pretty much how we recorded, just standing in a circle, feeding off of each other to play these tunes. So that's very cool. So thanks to the band for being geniuses and putting in all that time on your own gear and on your own talent so that when you showed up to this, it was just flawless. So I feel very, very blessed that my name gets to go on this. But on the album artwork, I'm actually calling it Jason Mraz and Friends, because I definitely couldn't have done this alone. There's a lot of people I wrote songs with, and clearly there's a lot of musicians that made this happen. So thanks to many.
Jason, would you say you have gratitude?
Man, I have so much gratitude that I could only end this album with a song called Gratitude. So that's track 12. I'm bursting with gratitude.
Awesome. Well, that's amazing, guys. Thank you so much for your time, and more importantly, thank you for the music. It's really, really great stuff. I can't wait for the record to come out. You mentioned it's June 19th, correct?
Yep, the single's out now. There's actually 2 singles out already. There's going to be a third one coming out in late May, and then June 19th we'll release the rest of the album. And then in the summer, probably July, late July, maybe August, there'll be an actual physical release. So folks who like vinyl, folks who like CD, we still have that coming, but manufacturing obviously got delays thanks to issues beyond our control, you know.
Sure, yeah.
But I'm thrilled. I'm so thrilled about this record. I'm thrilled. I'm just thrilled. You know, I don't know that I've made a record that, you know, I love the records I've made, don't get me wrong, but, you know, I don't know if I'd want to go to a party and be like, hey guys, let's put my record on, right? It's just like, it's a weird thing because I'm a songwriter. It's more for personal time, you know, like, hey, listen to this when it's right for you. That's always been my approach. Listen to this in your car, listen to this on your headphones. I don't want to hear when you're listening to it. It's going to be awkward for me. So go listen to this. But this album, I want to hear it. I want to hear this album when it's on. So I'm probably going to bring this album with me to parties, you know, like, hey guys, I made a record. Let's put this on. It's good. So I'm thrilled about that. That's a cool little experience to have.
That's great. You should put a sound system in the back of your pickup truck and just drive around playing the record for people and be like, hey, yo, check out my new record.
That's a great idea.
Awesome.
That's old school.
That's old school.
Yeah.
That's like pre-old school.
Yeah, it is.
Awesome. Michael, do you have a place where people can find out more about you online?
Oh, yeah, sure. Well, I mean, I have a website that I probably need to update very sorely, but it's just michaelgoldwasser.com. I'm on all socials. You can find me on Facebook, Michael Goldwasser Producer. My Twitter and Instagram handle is goldswagger_. My artist name is Goldswagger. I do R&B under that name, and I have another site called goldswaggermusic.com. So that's probably more than you expected. But yeah, I'd love it for people to reach out to me. I'd love feedback from this if anyone wants to catch me on socials.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Awesome. Scott, how about you?
Simple, Scojak.com. The Scojak is spelled SCOJAC. It's the first 3 letters of Scott, next 3 letters of Jacoby. That's my website. And then socials, I'm barely on, so excuse, like it's just not my thing. But like I think at Usonia Studios exists somewhere. So yeah. And thanks, Mark. You did a great job. And
thank you.
Thank you to you, Jason and Michael, for being part of it.
Yeah, man.
Scott. And thank you to everyone who's watching and listening. And you know, as Jason sometimes says, time is your greatest wealth. You know, so you just spent a long time listening to us talk. So we really appreciate that. We don't take it for granted. You know, like we couldn't do this without feedback from other people making music or fans. So we really, really appreciate that.
Awesome. Cool. Well, you guys, everybody stay safe. Jason, I know I saw some people in the chat room earlier that are looking forward to you taking this thing on the road. So we're looking forward to when it gets back to normal.
It's going to happen. You know, we've had some tour dates on the books, but everything's on hold right now until the state of the world kind of discovers itself, its new self. So whether that's the end of the year or early next year, either way, we're gearing up to be ready for that when it happens. So thanks for standing by. And but I will tell you this, you know, I did want to get this record out long before we toured. So the goal was to get it out spring, summer, as we're doing, and then not tour till the fall and next year, because I want people to actually spend time with the record. I want them to hear it, listen to it, have things about it that they love. So then when we come on the road and play it, they're already kind of dialed in. I've done tours in the past where you're touring before the album comes out, and nobody knows your new songs.
Right.
So this was a strategic play to get the album out early and then tour later. So unfortunately, tour is much later because of the situation. But we're coming. Don't you worry. Just keep your dance shoes laced up because it's a dance party. You can dance to every song on this record. You can dance to every song. It is so good. So thanks to Michael for your delicious arrangements on the grooviness of this record.
Thank you for your great songs and singing, and Scott for your great mixing. Thanks all around. Gratitude all around. I'll have a gratitude bowl.
Awesome. Cool. A couple of housekeeping things. Everybody watching that's on Puremix, we have a new video coming out today, new episode of Vance Powell start to finish, and a bunch of other really fun stuff in the very, very near future. And there's also a 50% off sale going on for sugar right now, so make sure you check that out. So we'll be back next week on Monday with Andrew Sheps with another episode of Andrew Talks to Awesome People. It's going to be a good one, so make sure you tune in. And you can see the whole schedule at puremix.net. So guys, thank you again for your time. Stay safe.
Thanks, Mark.
We'll see everybody soon.
Thank you.
All right, cheers. Thanks, everybody.
Cheers.